Hi, everybody. I'm Ashleigh Banfield, and this is Drop Dead Serious. It is Tuesday, April the 7th, 2026. I'm doing something a little different than what we've been doing over the past, like 60-ish days. I have an update for you on the story of Celeste Rivas Hernandez and David Burke, better known as D4vd, David the singer. And it is mind-blowing. We've all been looking at the Nancy Guthrie case for the last 2+ months. And as it turns out, there's a lot that's been going on in California and in Texas regarding this case and the murder, potentially, of this 14-year-old teenage girl who was found rotting in the trunk of the singer's Tesla. So to start with, I'm going to give you a full background of this case in case you're sort of joining or in case you've sort of forgotten, because it's been a while, right? And a lot of details came out very fast and furiously at the beginning of this case. So in a moment, I'm going to just give you, take you down soup to nuts on this case. But first and foremost, I just want to tell you what has transpired. Something I didn't expect. The LAPD let the car go. They let the Tesla go. Apparently, reportedly, they only spent 2 days processing that vehicle and then sent it back to the impound lot, where it stayed for days and weeks and months, just clicking up the charges, because it costs money to have a car sitting in a lot. You've probably had a car towed at some point. You've had to pay. You're like, what the hell? I didn't want to have to pay this. I didn't take that. You have to pay. Yeah. So I am astounded at the amount of money that vehicle clocked up sitting in the impound lot, because David didn't come and get it. Somebody else did. And it is a freaking mystery, and it is sketchy. Let me tell you, when I tell you who it was who arrived to get that Tesla on the eve of an auction, and what that guy was carrying and what he did, I think you're going to think it's pretty effing sus as well. That's coming up in just a moment. Also, I've learned from a private investigator named Steve Fischer, who has been heavily involved in investigating this case, that 2 minor girls presented themselves to the Los Angeles Police Department with photographic evidence saying that they too were involved, you know how, with David the singer, David Burke, D4vd. And I'm going to tell you what Steve discovered happened to them, how they were treated, what the LAPD may or may not be doing with their information. And it's critical, right? Because there could be so many possible charges in the case involving Celeste. She's 14, been missing for a long time, maybe since age 12. Involved with this much older singer. Yeah. Then, of course, she shows up dismembered in his frunk of his Tesla. So many possible charges here. Are they at least going for the low-hanging fruit, the LAPD? You know, being with a minor when you're not supposed to be in that way? I'll get to that. Also, I'm going to lay out some pretty catastrophic fuck-ups. It appears to me that the LAPD may have really dropped the ball in this investigation. And when I say really dropped the ball, like the key evidence that might have actually been able to crack this case. So, number one, you've probably heard Steve Fischer's reports that he got access to the rental home that David was living in right before Celeste's mutilated body was found in his Tesla. And that there was a burn cage in a box. The LAPD never took it. They raided the house. They took lots of stuff out of the house. But when Steve Fischer went into that house, that burn cage was still sitting there in the box. Yeah. And also another really grisly piece of equipment that was not taken into evidence. Something that you might use to dismember a body. And at the time that Steve Fischer saw it, nobody knew that Celeste's body had officially been dismembered. Well, now we do. And you're going to hear how Steve Fischer learned that, how he got information, how it's in court documents. And it's just vile. And it's so macabre. And now to know that all that equipment was in the house that David was renting and Steve Fischer saw it, you're going to hear about all that in a moment. But also something across the street. You're going to learn about a home across the street from the home David was living in with some really big, important cameras trained right on the front of David's house. Now, that sounds like that would be a boon to investigators. What? The neighbors across the street have incredible video cameras looking right at David's home? Well, that could help us solve the case. Yeah. No. And not because of the cameras or the homeowners, because of the LAPD. I'll tell you how this went down and how it may have been colossally fucked up. That's coming in just a moment. And then also why we now know that the police may actually, and the prosecutor may actually be looking at premeditated murder charges against David. Yeah, so there is a lot to get to here. And again, it's been a while. We've all had our attention taken towards Nancy Guthrie in Arizona. And so I have an entire playlist. If you've been following this since the beginning, you already know how incredibly disturbing the story was. But if you want to catch up and then get even a little bit more in depth, I've got an entire playlist from all my episodes that you can find on my YouTube homepage. So you can sort of listen for hours on all of those details. But here's just sort of a quick backstory on this particular case before I get to all the meaty stuff that I talked to Steve Fischer about. So it was back in September 2025. Big headlines. An abandoned black Tesla is found in the Hollywood Hills. It's getting attention because two reasons. It's got Texas plates, and the neighbors say it stinks. There is an unmistakable smell. They think at first it's probably a dead animal that's rotting somewhere nearby, but it gets worse and worse and worse. And eventually the neighbors are like, I've had enough. Let's, call the cops about this abandoned Tesla. It ain't moving. It's getting dirtier and dirtier. We need to tell the police. And the police come, and they tag it and they tow it. And then within a couple of days, the tow yard workers where, the police towed the Tesla, they have the same problem. This Tesla smells bad. And the odor is so bad, it becomes unbearable, and they call the police. Now, this is the second time the police are called about this stinking car. So the police get there, they realize, oh, yeah, I recognize that smell. They get a warrant, and they open up the front trunk. Because the Teslas have their trunks in the front. They're called frunks. And when they, under warrant, open up that frunk, it is god-awful what happens, what they see, and what they smell. They discover it is a badly decomposed body. At this point, they think possibly dismembered, hard to tell, which we can't believe because it's like, don't you know? Right? How bad is this that you don't even know? But Celeste Rivas Hernandez was found one day after what would have been her 15th birthday. Thing is, though, the state of the body, you didn't have to be, too schooled in investigations to know that it had been in that car for a hell of a lot longer than just a day or two or three, right? Means that she was unmistakably 14 years old when she died. So the question became, what happened? What happened to Celeste? How did she end up this way? How did she die? Was she, and if she was dismembered, how was she dismembered and by whom? How did she end up in the trunk of this Tesla? And what the hell does the singer David have to do with it, the guy who owns the Tesla, right? So that Tesla in question is registered to the singer David, D4vd, but his legal name is David Anthony Burke. From very early on, his name was tied to this case for reasons that went far beyond the fact that the Tesla was just registered to him. Celeste Rivas Hernandez had been reported missing out of Lake Elsinore. Her family had reported her missing back in April of 2024. Look, I know what a lot of people say. Celeste had been a runaway. And in fact, she'd run away many times before, right? So it wasn't unusual. But Celeste's mom had said that before her daughter had disappeared, Celeste had been seeing somebody named David. That's all she said, somebody named David. Yeah. And since then, lots of stuff has surfaced. Lots of video clips have surfaced. And they sure do seem to show Celeste Rivas Hernandez hanging out with David, D4vd, the singer. Lots of these clips came from Twitch live streams. adding to the reporting that it looked sure as hell like these two were romantically involved. Yeah, and that's why this story started to get even more upsetting and then disturbing, because Celeste was a kid, younger than 14. And the spotlight on David really started to heat up from there. Police searched the Hollywood Hills property where he had been living, reportedly. It was rented out by his manager. He was living in that place. And his world tour, wouldn't you know it, suddenly was canceled. He was right on the verge of going on this world tour, and he is like really up and coming, right? He's really starting to take off with his career. And suddenly, done. World tour canceled. He goes underground. But his name is being dragged above ground, right? Wow, like dragged. Headlines are beaming with his name. Live stream clips are going out everywhere. Social media posts. The internet theories are starting to just swell and explode. This goes on for months. But all this time later, here we are. It's April 2026. Nobody has been charged in Celeste's death. We have not heard from David about this girl that he's been seeing, on live streams, and friends of his have gone to the press saying that they were definitely a thing. They were definitely an item. They were definitely dating, even though she was easily 14 and even maybe as young as 12, because Celeste had been missing a lot in between ages 12 and all the way up to 14. And seen with him, and evidence with witnesses saying she's with David. So David doesn't say a word? Nothing? This was your girlfriend by all accounts, right? By the witness accounts and your friends and your Twitch live streams, this was your girlfriend. And she's dead and rotting in your trunk. You got nothing to say about that? Especially on her birthday? Right? Weird. But I get it. If he thinks and his lawyers think, hey, you, shut up. You could be in big trouble right now. You don't say a word, because everything you say can and will be held against you, right? Even if you say it to the press, even if you say it to the police, like, just shut up. That could have been the advice he was following. But it sure seemed weird to all of us. Like, what the hell, guy? Where's your girlfriend? You just found out she's in your trunk. You got nothing to say about that? You're not sad? You canceled your world tour, though, for a reason. What was that about? The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's records in Celeste's case, wish I could tell you about them, but I can't. And that's because they are under a court-ordered security hold. And it wasn't the medical examiner. No, they're actually pissed off about it. They don't want it to be under a security hold. They don't think that's right. We're a public office. It's because of a request by the LAPD. So this means that the public cannot see Celeste's cause of death, manner of death, full medical examiner's findings, toxicology reports, all those things. Medical examiner himself publicly went out and criticized the fact that the LAPD put the security hold on, saying that this is virtually unheard of, virtually unheard of in a lot of other counties. And they don't think that this improves the outcomes of justice in the system, right? So they're not happy about it, but they're beholden. They got to do what the LAPD says. But they argued. So now, after months of silence and secrecy and then swirling speculation, we are learning something far more concrete. According to unsealed court records, Los Angeles prosecutors have identified D4vd, David, the singer, as a target of a grand jury murder investigation into Celeste's death. Okay, that's all right. So target, murder investigation, but wait for it, because premeditated murder is different. Apparently, they also moved to force testimony from David's mom, dad, and brother. And when I say they, I mean the prosecutor in the case wanting an appearance before the grand jury. So David's brother's name is Caleb. And along with mom and dad, Caleb and the parents, the trio, were not happy about this. A Texas court actually ended up being brought into this whole thing because the family fought this request to come to California to appear before a California grand jury. They're in Texas. And they're like, why? What do you want from us? And a Texas court shut them down. They tried to, family tried to block those subpoenas, and the Texas court said denied. But they appealed it. And In all of this court action, the records included new details that we had not heard before about how Celeste was found. Because David's family wanted, like, why do you think we're material witnesses? What is it? All these things are, all the documents we see are all, redacted. We can't see anything about why we'd be material witnesses. And then in their challenges, suddenly affidavits are public and they start to learn all sorts of stuff along with the rest of us. And that is that once detectives opened up that trunk, they found what they called a cadaver bag, partially unzipped. And in it, they saw a decomposed head and torso. But that's not all. They said they found a second black bag. They didn't call the second black bag a cadaver bag. They just said a second black bag. Could it be a second black cadaver bag? Sure. They just didn't say those words, so I can't say those words. They found a second black bag containing severed body parts. Arms and legs, according to Steve Fischer. Head and torso in one cadaver bag, arms and legs in the other black bag. NBC Los Angeles reported that law enforcement sources believe Celeste actually may have died in the spring of 2025. They also say that they believe maybe more than one person was involved in her death and in the effort to dispose of Celeste's remains. So that's big news from NBC, that they believe that law enforcement says they believe that more than one person might have been involved here. Prosecutors weren't only looking at David's family in the suburb of Houston. Their focus also seems to have reached people, who orbit around him, including a pal of David's named Neo Langston. Neo was a friend of David's. Reportedly, they tracked him down in Montana after he, allegedly, failed to show up for the grand jury. Story goes, he was subpoenaed to show up before the grand jury that was companeled to look into this death, right? Celeste's death. And he didn't show. That's what the allegation is. He just ghosted them. So he's later brought back to Los Angeles, and recent reports say that he actually may have gone on to testify before the grand jury. But not everybody believes that. You will hear in a moment why Steve Fischer is not so sure that Neo actually testified before the grand jury. Steve Fischer thinks something else might have happened. So I had a wide-ranging conversation with Steve, and if you don't know Steve, you should. He actually has been doing a lot of work on the Nancy Guthrie case, tweets out lots of information and his findings and theories and ideas about the Nancy Guthrie case. But he's a private investigator in California, and he's been following the David and Celeste case from the beginning. His Twitter handle is Steve Fischer Investigates. He's licensed in a number of states, and he has a private investigations company called Search Investigations. So I called Steve Fischer because I remember covering him extensively when he was the first person to actually get into David's home, that home that he'd been staying in that was rented by his manager, and found the burn cage in there. And something else that he's about to tell you, and was able to look around. So clearly, Steve has been at the forefront of looking into the Celeste Rivas Hernandez investigation, and has run up against not only total brick walls, but some pretty angry and aggressive behavior, it seems, from the district attorney in this case as well. Here's my conversation with Steve Fischer. Hey, quick note, this episode is sponsored by Cowboy Colostrum, and if you have been trying to fix your gut health, this might be something for you. You know that colostrum is packed with nutrients, right, that support your gut, your immune system, and your skin, even your hair and your energy levels. Cowboy Colostrum is sourced from 100% American grass-fed cows, and it is true first-day whole colostrum, which means it is loaded with bioactive compounds like immunoglobulins and growth factors. And just to be clear, the calves, they get what they need first. Cowboy only collects the surplus. And you can mix this into your coffee or your smoothies. They've got chocolate, vanilla, matcha, strawberry. People have really noticed glowing skin, stronger hair, less bloating, and steadier energy during the day. And for a limited time, you get up to 25% off your entire order. You're welcome. Just go to cowboycolostrum.com/Banfield and then use my code Banfield at checkout. Again, 25% off. Yay. Just use my code Banfield at cowboycolostrum.com/Banfield. So, Steve, a lot has happened in the David and Celeste case. When we all sort of turned our attention to Nancy Guthrie in Arizona, you kept working diligently. Can you give me just a bit of a summary, and then we'll go more in depth point by point?
Yeah, a lot has happened, but not so much public facing, which is a little frustrating because, we need the public's attention on this. This is a 14-year-old girl. It doesn't seem like too many people are in her corner. I mean, the public is, but there's some people that need to stand up here, I think, including her family, quite frankly. And what's been going on is that there's been some court motions, court proceedings that have been taking place. It's come out now. There's no secret about the grand jury. There is a grand jury process happening, and they had subpoenaed David's mother, father, and younger brother. And they challenged that because they live out of state. They live in Texas. And that's been a process that's been ongoing. I don't know exactly where it stands because they were successful in sealing the records after we released the initial batch of public information. So they wanted them to testify in front of the grand jury. And, there was a lot of telling information in those filings. But they're
and I'll get to that. I'm going to get to
Yep.
that information because I
Sure.
think that was really your biggest break was the information that you found in those filings, and I think that's opened a whole can of worms. But it's more than just that grand jury effort to subpoena the family members of David down. I think they're in a suburb of Houston. There's also that effort of them of the grand jury to subpoena David's friend.
Yeah.
Where did that go and where does it stand?
So, we didn't really know that he apparently had been subpoenaed. We can't say for sure, but Neil Langston, who is somebody that is very close friends with him, who was at the house often, and we have lots of evidence of that. He was arrested at his mom's house in Montana. And when I called the sheriff's department up there to find out, they said that they were serving a warrant for failure to appear to testify in Los Angeles. And they didn't say grand jury, but I think we can assume that was for grand jury. They did extradite him back to Los Angeles, and he got out on a $60,000 bond until I guess he could appear and testify. And then TMZ actually had a video of him, I think, appearing and leaving, actually, definitely leaving, as well as with the DA shortly afterwards arriving at the courthouse. But he only spent 40 minutes, according, if TMZ is accurate. And that makes me think that there wasn't actually testimony. There's no way that it would be that quick unless he
So just to be clear, TMZ has him, Neil Langston. I always get, is it Neil Langston?
Yeah.
Langston, yeah. They've got video of him going into the courthouse and coming out all within 40 minutes. And if anybody knows a grand jury process, it isn't going to be 40 minutes.
No.
I think you once told me, look, just to get your name and your most critical information on the record is going to be the first 40 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to talk about particular grand jury proceedings. I have appeared at multiple for different cases, and the process of one, just when you arrive, checking in with the bailiff, making sure that you are who you say you are as you're going in front of a grand jury, then giving you the kind of the ground rules, then going in and being sworn in this big elaborate process where there's sergeant at arms and everything, and just asking you your name. Have you ever used a different version of that name? Or this and that? I mean, you're not getting anywhere in 40 minutes. It could be a multi-day process for somebody like Neil Langston, as far as I'm concerned.
What do you think that says? I know there's a school of thought here and there about what that means, but what are your thoughts about the whole lightning fast appearance?
So I think it means that he probably pled the fifth, and that he was there with counsel, and his counsel affirmed that he was representing him, I think that they use that as leverage to say, listen, we're playing fifth. You want to work a deal? Offer us immunity of some sort, whatever deal they're looking for. I have a feeling what happened was they used that to let them know that was their intention, and they probably met a day or two later with whoever they needed to meet with on the DA side and worked out some sort of agreement, and probably then ended up giving the testimony that he had. Because Neo, and listen, I wish he would talk more often, but he hasn't talked. But he did come out last week, 2 weeks ago, and made a kind of a wild statement saying that he was now legally fine. He was legally fine, and that he had all kinds of information and had all the receipts. And he basically said, I've got everything they need. And so I can't imagine the DA would be super happy about him making that if they has a deal. But he came out with a really really arrogant statement, which great. Where was this 6 months ago? Why did it take having to extradite you here? He's not some hero to me if he's been holding on to this information, and because he got a deal, he might have rolled on his friend. This is a 14-year-old girl that was chopped up and left in a Tesla, and I think I think certain people knew, even if they weren't directly involved, knew that she was in there, and to go around parading the fact that you've got all this information and you're legally fine, and ended it with a ha ha ha. It's tone deaf.
It's definitely tone deaf. There's nothing funny about any of this. In fact, it's just excruciatingly frustrating. There's so many areas that I want to go to with you on this. Like, the LAPD has treated this case in a very unusual way, the homicide division. They have sealed everything. They've even, I think, compelled the medical examiner to be gagged in this case. And there's something that's very incongruous about that. Walk me through the timing of that, what the reasons were that the LAPD gave for telling the medical examiner you cannot talk, and the medical examiner said that's crazy, we're allowed to talk, and why that doesn't sort of pass the sniff test now.
So, I know a lot of people think that the LAPD we're going to have this court hearing to get it sealed, in anticipation of the report coming out. But I think it's a little different that, the medical examiner said that in the first week, after they identified Celeste, they received a request to put a security hold, which is the sealing of the records, put a security hold on the Celeste file. And a security hold is actually determined by the medical examiner. They have the right to approve it or deny it, and they denied it. And so that's why she was in the database. You were able to look up and see the status of her case. And then all of a sudden, back when they filed, I think what happened is they said, we're denying it, but we'll give you a heads up when the autopsy report and investigative report is finalized, and if you want to try and get a court order, you can. And then all of a sudden we see them do an ex parte emergency hearing one day, and they get it sealed. And I think that's because the report was done. I do think there's a cause and manner of death established, and I think the report's done, and then they got it sealed. And the medical examiner did something I've never seen done before, to come out with a press release saying, we don't agree with this. We have to abide by it, but we don't agree with it. And we think that it is a better public record or public knowledge.
And wasn't this back, I want to say, around end of November? I mean, it's been months. It's been months and months.
I think it was November 21st, if I remember right. Yeah.
Okay. So if one of the reasons that the LAPD gave was because they wanted their detectives to see things before the public saw things, and I get that. That makes sense. But that was November 21st,
yeah.
Right? So how many months has it been? How long does that homicide squad need before public record can be public?
Well, and that's just it. We haven't seen we've seen we've seen no actual press conference about this case, even though it's high profile. We haven't gotten any updates. So we've gotten two written short press releases from LAT, this being one of them, where they said, the purpose of this, the sealing, getting the record sealed, was to make sure that detectives and robbery homicide unit got the information before the press and the public got it. That's understandable. You know, it should have some sort of, I believe, date when the sealing falls
Sure.
off. But here we are months later. They have that information, and when they ended up by saying, "This is not in an effort to undermine transparency." Well, then why is it still sealed? Why is it still, why is it because there's going to be public outrage when they find out what really happened to Celeste and wanting to know why there's not any movement, any answers yet? And you don't want that heat?
I mean, 5 months is a long time. 5 months is a long time for, saying that your detectives need to have access, to the information first. But didn't they also say something like at that time, and I may have this sort of foggy, but didn't they also say something about we don't even think that necessarily a crime has been committed here other than concealment of a body? What?
Well, so that was the other press. That was the first press release. And so the two they come out with were outright, I'm just going to say they're outright lies, because the first press release, this is before anybody, there was talk about possible dismemberment and then not, but nobody had ever said that. And then they came out with a press release saying, the only, there might not be any crime in this case beyond criminal culpability for concealment of a body, which is a misdemeanor. And so that made you go, okay, well, she can't be dismembered then. It's got to be like an overdose and somebody made a bad decision and they're like, what do we do? And then we find out she was dismembered, and because of a sloppy filing that they did that wasn't sealed. And
let me get to that in a second. Continue your thought. I'm going to get to why you found out that she was dismembered.
They knew, detectives knew she'd been dismembered. There's no way that it was concealment of a body. That would have been mutilation of a corpse, and that's felony at very minimum. So that was a lie. And then the only other press release we get out of them is a lie too, when they say this is not being done to undermine transparency. And 5 months later, we still don't have that unsealed. So those are not genuine, and they're not. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's. It's a 14-year-old, and I just feel like they're playing hide the ball to an extent. I understand there's some things that can't come out, but
I was just going to say I'm always willing to give the benefit of the doubt, and so I'm going to back off from saying that they're lying. It is uncomfortable to hear them say concealment of a body when in fact they knew that she had been dismembered, which I'm getting to, and maybe 5 months isn't enough for them to get their detectives to see everything before we do. I think it's crazy, but I'll give them that in terms of just I won't say that they're lying. I'll just say that it seems like obfuscation to me.
I mean, that's me saying it, not you. I know that, but.
Let's go to how you found out, because you found out that Celeste was actually dismembered and in 2 bags. She was in a cadaver bag, and then the way the affidavit's written is like another bag. Whether it's 2 cadaver bags or a cadaver bag and something else, we don't know. But the cadaver bag held her head and torso, according to your reporting in the affidavit, and the second bag held her arms and legs. How was it you found that out?
So there was an effort to subpoena David's mother, father, and younger brother, who all live out of state in Texas, and that's a little different process to compel somebody to testify in front of a grand jury because they have to cross state lines, and so. But they did serve these subpoenas, and they filed a writ of habeas corpus. Each of them did, saying that their due process rights have been denied because the affidavits they received explaining why they would be a material witness were heavily redacted. And they said, we can't tell if we are or aren't because of the redactions. And so they filed the writ of habeas corpus with an appeal court.
So just to be clear there, the family of David are saying, what the hell do you want with us? Why are we material witnesses? When we look at the paperwork, it's all blacked out and scratched out. We don't even know what the heck it is you want from us. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so they're fighting the process down in Texas against the California prosecutor, and it was one of the filings that you saw?
What's that?
It's one of the filings that you ended up seeing that had all this information?
We saw that, and that was a rather short filing. There wasn't much detail in that, and what happened, and they lost that hearing, but then they filed an emergency motion with a different appeals court, and they were granted a stay through that, and so that meant the court wanted more information. They wanted to prove, that they were material witnesses and whatnot. So a rather extensive affidavit was filed, which showed from the LA court, it showed that, the state of California versus David Burke, and it listed, it said that he was suspected to have committed one count of murder 187. And which is, murder forethought in California, and
premeditated murder.
Yeah. And it went into detail. It was the whole filing was 156 pages, but that included David's family's, responsible now. But it went in to say that, the Tesla was called in by neighbors as abandoned, and it was picked up on Bluebird and taken to a tow yard, which we all know, and that because of the amount of the smell and the amount of flies that were accumulating around the car, the manager called, detectives came over, they made entry into the car, realized it was a human body, and then called the medical examiner out after getting a search warrant, and they found her. They said they opened one cadaver bag, which on top, and they unzipped it and saw a head and torso. And then upon the medical examiner removing that, they found a second black bag underneath that held her limbs. And
so
that's heartbreaking.
That information, by the way, heartbreaking is the least of it. But, that information had been kept from the public.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea? Was it a mistake that they put that in the paperwork when they were trying to get the Texas family, David's Texas family, to come up and appear before the grand jury? Did they forget to redact that, or why do you suppose that was out there?
So I don't think, I don't know. I don't know if, that's a good question. What I'll say is, I think some of these super aggressive tactics are taken, like to get his family out here, no matter what. And then you got to file these filings. Some of this it has to be filed, right? And if it's not immediately sealed, listen, the way that we found out that David was this was a murder investigation was that there was the filing for the medical examiners thing was filed in LA Superior Court, and for a brief 5 or 6 minutes, it was not sealed, and you happen to be in contact with the clerk's office. You got a copy of it, and listen, I'll tell you, I've got a copy of it, and it said right in there, I've never released it, but it said right this months ago, it said this is a murder investigation, and so that really changed things. It was the first time we had seen that, and then all of a sudden this one we get more detail, because what they have to do is they have to make the case to the judge out in Texas that they really are material witnesses, and it brought up things like, the car is registered to the house in Texas where these people live, and we have learned that David has a strong relationship with his father and a strong relationship with his mother. But
wasn't she his manager? Wasn't she somehow involved in his career?
I think she has something to do more with like the merchandise sales and something like that. I know that he transferred the houses into her name and whatnot after, it became apparent that he was a suspect. But they're fighting it. I guess to an extent I can understand that it's family. I mean, I do and I don't, but this is just, yeah. So, well, to answer your question, yeah, it's because of filings of being so aggressive that you didn't have to back these filings up, because they're not going to just give it to you in all cases. Maybe if this was here in California, the prosecutor's name would carry enough weight, but in Texas, they wanted proof of it, and people are following this case very closely, and stuff like that's not going to get by. So the cat's out of the bag.
Prosecutor in this case, Beth Silverman, she is not a fan of yours.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that aren't, but yeah, no.
But in a weird way, like there's some things that she's done that don't make sense. I mean, you and I have had a conversation about this, but tell our viewers and listeners, like, the shit that you've been going through.
Yeah, I was very honest on Twitter. I was in a situation, and I can't get too deep in the weeds about it, but I was in a situation where, in this case, and where I was at the courthouse, I was handed a handwritten note on a piece of scratch paper saying that I needed to show up, would be the next business day. But I think it was like a Friday, and it had to be there Monday or Tuesday for in order to show cause for contempt of court. And
she handed you this piece of paper, handwritten piece of paper?
Her assistant did. She was there. She was there, and she had her assistant write it. So they handed it to me, and I'm like, is there a case now? I asked,
like, what is this? Was it a summons or a subpoena? Like, what was it?
I was in a place where there was a camera right above me, and I said, is there a case number for this? You'll get that when you show up. I'm like, well, how can I hire counsel if I don't even know what the contempt charge, like, what's the allegation, contempt, to show up? And so listen, I don't think anybody would disagree that knows, of course, this is a powerful prosecutor, right? She's the one who brought Neo back from, and I will say I had detectives at one point that her direction show up at my house at 6 a.m. in the morning. And
you know for sure they were at her direction, that detectives showed up at your house? They
said, here's the phone number, you need to call her. So
that would be, okay, clear.
And I talked to her. And so I was really worried about that because, for obvious reasons, I was worried about it. So, and because I was leaving town actually to go to Georgia on a search and rescue mission for this missing SMU law professor that's missing on the Appalachian Trail. And I'm like, I have to cancel this trip. And so I ended up going out, but I put it on Twitter. I said, in order to protect myself, I'm just going to be open and honest about this. This is what happened. I showed a picture of what I received. I'm like, I went to the clerk's office. They have no record of a case with my name on it. There's no case number. I'm like, how can I hire an attorney? I go to an attorney and say I was given a piece of scratch paper, and to show up Monday. So I just said I want to put it out there in case I'm arrested for contempt, so people understand. And
so you put the picture out on social media of that piece of paper that's handwritten, basically saying
people
you're in trouble.
Real.
Come, you appear tomorrow at 8:30 at the courthouse on contempt with no case number, no official subpoena. It's not a summons. Did you call the courthouse and ask, what is this? And do I have to be there?
I went after I was handed it. It was handed to me. I went to the department. It was in department whatever, and there was a big sign on the door saying that they were on vacation. They were dark until the following Monday, and that the other department was handling their cases, and that's the department where they handed me the thing. I'm like, so then I went to the clerk's office, and I'm like, first of all, I know this isn't a summons, but do you have any record of this? And he looked at me, he's like, I have no idea what that is. I've never seen anything like that. So, and I talked to a couple of lawyers I know, and they're like, I can't imagine they can be enforced. But then again, you never know whether they can do it. And then if it's like, oops, sorry, So I was gone like 7 or 10 days after that on this search at Blood Mountain.
So you went on your search trip, and did you hear from the prosecutor? Or where are you? I'm sitting here in court waiting for you at 8:30 in the morning, or what happened?
That out, I said in there, I'm like, I'm partially doing this so the press knows in case something happens. So, I did get a call on that Monday from a couple of people in the press that I didn't really know, but they called me and they said, hey, we're here at the hearing. We just went, are you going to show up? And I'm like, no, I'm in Georgia. And I was told that, so this was the day that I guess Robert Morgenrath was appearing, I guess, at the grand jury, I'm told. And so they said that they were in the courtroom asking when I was going to be called. And the bailiff said he's not on the docket, but we're going to call it after we're done, after everybody else is gone. So they waited. And then I wasn't there, of course. So they said, we're moving it to the afternoon, 1:30 thing. So it was the same thing. They show up at 1:30. They say he's not on the docket. And then after it was over, they were waiting to see if I got called, and then they said they cleared the 3 reporters out of the courtroom, and they weren't sure why. And then they brought Rob Morgenrath in with his attorney, and then it wasn't brought up again. So I don't know where it stands. There could be a warrant for all I know. I don't know.
But nobody communicated anything with you after that. There's nothing that came from the courthouse. There's nothing that came from the prosecutor. Nobody said we're charging you with contempt at this point for not showing up. Nothing.
And I will say that I wrote a very, very detailed letter to the judge that was supposed to be overhearing this, in the form of like a motion to continue, and let her know, like, this is how it started, gave her a copy of it and everything. I never even got a response to that. So it's not like I didn't just show up. I gave notice, but I was like, and then after this whole thing happened, I did email the DA and I said, yes, I didn't show up, but I don't think I needed to. And here, is there anything going on and that I need to know about? And I never heard anything. So.
And nothing ever showed up by mail either, right? You get this handwritten thing handed to you by the DA's assistant. You never got anything mailed to your address. Nothing official ever sort of went through the formal process. I mean, this is just so incredibly unorthodox. It sounds like the way things worked when I was in Soviet Union.
I mean, before this happened, I had received some official legitimate court documents, and I followed everything to the T. This was different. Maybe
unrelated
from that. I guess maybe not everybody loves that I'm involved investigating this case, and there's some things that I brought public that I think are important, and I get that not everybody loves that's being exposed, but
let's talk about that, because I covered you. Yeah. Well, I covered you've done some really good work in finding stuff in this case. And I think it was the day that you were able to gain entry legally to the house that David was living in when Celeste disappeared, and, her body's found in the car around the block. And you discovered a burn cage, a box, with a burn cage in it, but it was unused, right? And some other artifacts that just seemed like, how are those things not seized when the police raided that house and took whatever evidence they needed?
Yeah. I mean, the burn cage, there was a chainsaw, which is not needed at that house. The house came with gardeners and all that. Things that, especially put even by themselves, is suspicious enough, but together you go, knowing that there's a deceased girl that's been sitting in that Tesla, is like, really wonder what the plans were. Was it to essentially incinerate her, and get rid of her ashes? And then I was like, I just couldn't believe that David or any of those people like have it in them to pull her apart, to just rip her apart. And then, because I didn't know at that time until this finally came out, and it just broke my heart when I found out she'd really been dismembered. I mean, 14 years old, and they spent time hacking her apart. And
well, we don't know who did.
What's that?
At this point, we don't know who.
We don't know who did it,
but
I don't think the person did it. And but somebody did it, and I don't care if it was somebody she knew, or if it was some older person or some random person she'd never met, whoever did it. I mean, just the fact that they took this little 14-year-old girl and they hacked her apart into pieces and put her in 2 separate bags and left her in a car. I just don't understand this, and I don't understand why there's not this press to get real justice going. So on several levels, right, Steve? Like, what about the LAPD? What are they doing? Because I've got only a few more minutes with you, I know, but I've got to hit on the neighbors across the street had a pretty significant surveillance system. They had video cameras trained right on the front entrance of David's home. And tell me, really summarize here, what happened when the detectives showed up at the home across the street to say, do you have any video? Yeah, so I actually was given video of the detectives arriving at that house. It's a large estate, and it's not the people's primary estate, and they weren't there at the time. They have estate managers, and so when the detectives buzzed the gate, they said, we're investigating a homicide, and we want to know if your surveillance camera's here, if you can check them. And they said, well, we're talking to you from the other house right now. We don't, but we're happy to have our IT guy look through and whatnot. And they, they gave dates that they wanted and stuff, and I'm sorry, they didn't give dates at that time, but there was like one round of I think text messages that went back and forth, and the people said, you know, they had a scheduled upgrade on like September 25th to upgrade their entire system, and the detectives never came back, and there was 4 terabyte drive from one camera that faces like the front door of the house that, you know, David was renting, and that got taken out during the upgrade, and it's a specialized security system that's kind of used for like in like corporate manufacturing environments where it's like trade secret stuff. So the drives are made that if you take them out of the security system, you can never view it again. And that's so if like a spy from another company it's coming in and steal the hard drive, they could never view the footage. You'd
have to upload it before you remove
so if you're
it.
going to ever take the drive out of the console, you have to upload it. Well, they didn't do that, and they didn't have any reason to do that. But all that footage is gone, and that's...
I mean, well, here, let's be really clear about this. The police show up at their door at the gate. They're not there. The police say, we want your video. They say, sure thing, we want to help. And the police never come back. Yeah. So they inform the police, we've got a scheduled upgrade coming, just so you know. Yeah. And the police didn't do anything about it. Like, this is a huge failing that the police didn't show back up to get what I would argue is like one of the most critical pieces of evidence, a camera pointing right at David's house where you might see Celeste going in and never coming back out.
Yes. And you know, it's a failing no matter what. They should have gone in. But in my mind, I was thinking, well, they probably have video from the Tesla itself, and they probably have where it was parked on Bluebird. But now, listen, that can't be the case. Like, here we are 7 months later, and they don't have a case. So it's arrest. Like, oh, that really was critically important. And even, the Tesla itself, I don't believe had, I'll tell you, I found the Tesla last week. I thought they'd taken it and crushed it. It's parked at a body repair place, a Tesla body repair place. I don't know if they're going to like flip this thing and somebody's going to buy it and not know there's a girl in the front.
Whoa, it's a crime scene. What?
Place. Yeah.
It's not in evidence. It's not being held. It's not in a police impound lot.
Oh, no, they kept it for 2 days, and they turned it back to the impound yard. And then what happened was it was never picked up. So it went up. I've been watching it online the whole time. It went up for auction. It was listed for public auction. At 10 o'clock the night before it was being auctioned, it all of a sudden came off the auction roster because I was going to inspect it. And I called the place, and they said somebody showed up with a cashier's check and with power of attorney paperwork. And then I looked in DMV, I have DMV access, and somebody transferred it into their name from David's. And I was like, oh, there's something shady going on here. And I happened to be in a part of town the other day, and I drive by it, and I'm like, that's the Tesla with and it still had the Texas plate and everything. So it's at a body shop.
So wait, so the day before auction, somebody shows up with a cashier's check.
Yeah, and power of attorney.
And they purchase from the impound lot the Tesla.
Yep.
You don't know who it is. There's no record of that.
I know who it is. I just can't say because of DMV access. But it's not a name that I knew before. But I know who it is now. Yeah.
And then how do you trace it to where it is now?
I just ran across it. I was on another case, and I was driving down the road, and it was literally parked on the side of the road in front of a body shop. And it has all these like stickers on the back of wings.
It's easy to find.
And then at the time, now I've driven by it a few times now, checked it out, but it has the Texas plates off it now. But it has the exact. It's the car. They've washed it since, but they haven't done anything else. And so I don't know. It's the whole thing's so screwed. It's like they don't even care. They're like, evidence. I don't know. Yeah. So they had it for 2 days.
But it's at this other body repair place that anybody could go and ask what's going on with that car. I want to buy it.
Where it is, because I know they'll be hammered with it. But I've been keeping an eye on it. But I don't. I just don't understand. It's like everything is just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know what to think anymore. I'm so frustrated. Because you know what? Start with the sex crimes if you have to. There are them. I announced like 2 weeks ago, I have 2 other minors that have come to me. One of them has given me tons of photo evidence. Her and him together. She's minor. There's no doubt.
Wait, which her? Celeste or this other minor who's talking to you?
Another minor. But at the same time, on the day that Celeste ran away, on the last time on February 15th, she's at one spot, and this other minor that he's involved with is 2 blocks away at a different place, and he's going back and forth. And I've got pictures of it.
Meaning the she was. Are you saying the she was Celeste and this other minor?
No, well, I'm saying yeah.
Celeste be a little bit more clear there. I'm not clear.
Sure.
On that particular day. What happened?
I've had 2 minors separately come to me. One of them has tons of photo evidence, including from February 14th, on Valentine's Day, and them together. I mean, romantically together. And she's underage.
The minor and David.
Yes, minor and David together in the rental house that my client owns. So, and there's no disputing it. It's not like you only see part of them. They're together, taking pictures into a mirror, and so they're together. And so, I encourage her to go to law enforcement.
Celeste is not in those pictures. To be clear, Celeste is
not in those pictures, and Celeste and this girl doesn't know Celeste, and I mean she knows who she is now, but she didn't know her. And I encouraged her to go to law enforcement. She was scared to death. She's like, I don't know if they could be, but she went and she's told them and she showed them pictures, and they're not prosecuting a sex crime. So it seems to be like it's murder or nothing. And at some point we got to protect these underage girls.
So this young minor, did she say that she'd had sexual relations with David and she's underage?
Well, absolutely.
And she told the police that, and they're not interested?
And yes, and she told the police that. I'm just saying there's been no movement on it at all, and they haven't followed up.
They haven't followed up with her?
Well, besides saying, yeah, you send us your pictures and stuff like that, there hasn't been like extensive sit-down interview with her. I'll put it that way. She's willing to. She finally got the courage up to be like, okay, I'll do what I need to do, and it doesn't seem to be a priority, or even doesn't even seem to,
Steve, NBC Los Angeles has a report. They say that law enforcement sources have told them that they believe Celeste was killed in the spring of 2025 and that there may be more than one person involved. Do you know anything about that?
Not directly from law enforcement, but I will say, the last picture that we have of Celeste alive is January 2nd, 2025. And we felt that something may have happened from there to spring, and also coupled with the fact of the neighbor having this really bad odor in their yard, where they had buried it, where the Tesla would park right next to them. They had buried a dog there, and they thought it was the dog, but it was kind of a wide window.
Wait. Stay there for a second. This is the neighbor directly across the street with the cameras that are pointing right. And the police didn't show up to get those cameras in that video. And they had buried the dog in their backyard and thought the smell was so terrible that they hadn't buried the dog deep enough.
That's right.
And when the Tesla left, suddenly the odor went away and they realized it wasn't the dog.
That's
Same
right.
neighbors.
That's right. And they said when we got to a certain temperature, warm enough, that the smell would overwhelm the backyard. And so we're not, January, it seemed like then they leased a new, David's manager leased a new Tesla in February, like February 2nd, I believe. So we were thinking about there, but I will say that I have talked to somebody that knows Celeste's family and it has some information that they believe around April 20th may have been a target date. So I'm not disputing that reporting. I just don't know. But I will say, I think that there's certain people that believe around that April 15th to April 20th is the date. It could be anywhere from January to, as far as I know, January to end of April.
But they have their ideas based on witnesses, last reportings of anybody who knew her, that kind of thing. And then this car that smelled and the report from the neighbor.
I was pretty sure we're talking January, February, but I do have a lot of faith in this witness and people directly tied to her they're talking to that she was seen April 20th. And after that went completely dark. So I could see April 20th. I just don't know the exact date, but I think that could be April 20, end of April could be in play, but it's just hard to say without the details.
Well, it leads me to my last question because I
Yeah.
know your time is precious, but where are Celeste's parents in all this? Early on, we thought maybe they're undocumented and that's why they're not being vocal and they've like
Yeah.
they just, were so underground. But they have a daughter
Yeah.
who was mutilated.
Yeah.
And there's no justice here. And there's a rich boyfriend in whose Tesla she was found. What is their story and where are they and why are they not hammering down the doors of the LAPD?
So first, I'll say I've never spoken to them. I have made an attempt, gently made an attempt, but they haven't spoken to me. Nobody in the family. However, I know a lot of things, and with proof, not just speculation, but with proof. And I think that hesitation comes from Celeste was not a missing person. They knew where Celeste was. Celeste was showing up occasionally at family events. We got photo documentation of that. She showed up at a graduation for her cousin Esmeralda. She showed up, she's in that video where she's fighting with the people in the apartment complex next door.
Wasn't that her own birthday?
Yeah, it's when she's missing. It's supposedly a missing person.
And it's her birthday. She's in her own parents' backyard arguing with the neighbors, right?
Well, she shows up at that birthday type event too. That's the third one. So there's all these things. And listen, I know that some of her siblings had joined them on, fun events, let's say, going places. And so they knew what was going on. So I think that maybe they're thinking, they don't want to get in trouble for that, which I get. Listen, I don't think prosecutors are looking to prosecute that, right? But even if they were, I think the right thing to do would be to come out and say maybe we messed up, maybe we didn't, but we really need justice for Celeste because she ended up chopped up in a Tesla, and but that's not happening, and it's really heartbreaking. And the only other thing I can think of is, because I kind of saw it happen to me, is if somebody's being heavy-handed. Ultimately, the reason I was served, given that piece of paper, is because they didn't want me talking to the press anymore. They flat out told me, stop talking. You don't need to investigate the case. We don't need people knowing what evidence may have been looked or overlooked or not. And I think maybe Celeste family is being told, don't talk to anybody, or else, you could be, that's just speculation, or else something could happen to you. I don't know, but they need to. This girl, everybody failed this girl, it seems like, in life, and we can't fail her in death, and it feels like that's happening. 7 months later, no charges. I mean,
and we don't even know if there's a grand jury anymore impaneled for this, do we?
No, I mean, criminal grand juries in Los Angeles County are only impaneled for 30 days. So every 30 days it goes by. Ever since this stuff happened in Texas with the filings with the parents, there's been a whole that grand jury that subpoenaed them. They're not even impaneled anymore.
They have to pass that information onto the new grand jury and then pass that on to the one after that. It seems so inefficient.
And it's not the same as if you're the grand jury that was questioning that person. It's just reading it from testimony. It's not the same. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's like, listen, if they're having a hard time with the case or whatever, at least keep us someone informed.
Say something.
Have some sort of press conference and say, listen, this is where we stand. We can't tell you too much, but we are pursuing it, and we think we have something. I mean, playing hide the ball is not helping at all.
Well, how about also, get this out in the press to get anybody out there who might know something to say something to help maybe crack this open. That's right. That's what the whole Nancy Guthrie case is about. If you've seen something, say something, come forward. I have not heard one overture, from the police, and maybe I've missed something, but to help us solve this horrible injustice against this young girl.
Yep. Nope. Unfortunately, you're right. There's nothing.
Steve, thank you so much for your time. I've kept you longer than I said I would. I really appreciate it. Let's talk again about this.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully over an indictment, about an indictment.
Amen.
Thank you.
So that's where things stand. I got to tell you, I was kind of gobsmacked to hear that the Tesla, which in my opinion would be a crime scene in any murder investigation and prosecution. That would be something that would be in an impound lot. Maybe even for the jury to see. They had it all of 2 days reportedly. And then it was up for auction. Bye. Don't need you. Some stranger can come and get you. And it didn't even get to auction because on the eve, what the F? Who's the mystery man? Who comes with a power of attorney and a cashier's check and pays $9,600 in storage fees on the impound lot for that vehicle? I don't know about you, but it's pretty hard to get the smell of a dead body out of a car. It doesn't matter what kind of a discount you're going to get on a Tesla. This thing was actually kind of beat up. I don't think this Tesla would have been worth anywhere close to $9,600, especially with the stench of a dead body. So who felt that Tesla was that important to show up on the eve of the auction? Don't let it go to auction. Don't let it get out there. Get it first. Go and bring a cashier's check. Pay the impound lot. Who was that? Who had that need, that motive? Who would have sent somebody with power of attorney? I mean, what the actual? And why, in the name of any God you pray to, would the LAPD not be interested in talking to other minors, minor girls who said they were involved in you know what way with David, right? The singer, the age of majority singer. A guy who at the very least could be prosecuted for those kinds of crimes, you know, the SA stuff. Yeah. And there's other evidence of other girls here, but they didn't seem interested in talking to them. At least that's what they've told, these minor girls have told Steve Fischer. There's so much more to this story, y'all, and I don't know what the F they're doing. Like, keeping this under seal. I'm starting to feel like it's a Lori Vallow gag, right? Years and years of being gagged on everything having to do with Lori Vallow. Justice under a hood. That is not the way the United States of America operates. We are an open justice system. Believe me, as a war correspondent, I went to every country that operates differently. Hooded justice, you know, gulag justice. And thank God we don't operate like that. But when this stuff happens, I start to think we are starting to look that way. When justice happens completely gagged, without any transparency, and too much of that, that's when I start to get real angry. I understand that the police have to keep certain things quiet. That is natural. That's normal. That's through the dawn of ages. But when it starts to drone on that long, and the gags and the lack of transparency goes on that long, and there's a 14-year-old girl's justice that is in the ether somewhere. We're just waiting for justice for Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And where the fuck are her parents? Come on. This is a little girl. She was rotting. She'd been chopped up. She was rotting in a trunk on her birthday. Where are her parents in all of this? So many more issues to get to. For now, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And remember, please, truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.